I'm Gabby's Jules, Blue Skies over West London. It's because we have all this great midweek cup action. We also have Premier League midweek action, which, as you know, I don't like midweek league football. And I don't think I'm the only one. But I think, Jules, there's one place to start, and some people are calling it the game of the year. Maybe forgetting kind of the other 4-4 draw.
Yeah, I think so too.
Real Madrid against Real Sociedad. In terms of twists and turns, there were a ton towards the end. Just to give you the setting, Real Madrid had won the first leg away in San Sebastian 1-0. And this game somehow went to extra time.
And at some point, Real Madrid were out. They were 3-1 down at the Bernabeu with 10 or 15 minutes to go. And you thought, okay, they're not going to happen. Hendrik started up front, scored a lovely, lovely goal, but it's not the same as having Mbappe there. Even in midfield, that time, they looked a little bit leggy. Defensively, they were very unbalanced again. And Real Sociedad, who are not very good this year, let's be honest, certainly not as good as last season, for example, can still move the ball well, still have really good players like Kubo, like Oyarzabal, and they can hurt you at any time, especially if you put Camavinga left back, and especially if you make mistakes defensively like Real Madrid did. So it looked like they were going to get out.
You haven't mentioned for me the biggest culprit who... I mean, look, it hurts because he was one of my favorite players. I think one of the best defenders, one of the best all-rounders for many, many years. David Alaba had an absolute nightmare in this game. I think he's directly responsible for 2 of the goals.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's sad. It doesn't mean that he's finished. It could just mean that he's had a nightmare game, and obviously he's older now and he's had this really, really bad injury.
Long injury.
It's not the injury that led to his mistakes. There's a lot of stuff that could go on upstairs. But I think it does send the message that between now and the end of the season, Carlo Ancelotti is going to say, well, I can't rely on Alaba. It's got to be, in the bigger games, it has to be Rudiger and Raul Asensio, or possibly move Tchouaméni, but then you have another problem in midfield.
Yeah. I mean... Alaba, I think, was at fault. You're right. The fact that Camavinga was so bad as well against Kubo led to Alaba making those mistakes, scoring on goals, because Kubo was cooking really Camavinga every single time. And Camavinga is not a left back. He can do it. He did it last season. He's doing it again, although Fran Garcia was on the bench. So it was a weird choice from Carlo Ancelotti. And defensively, which is, again, not new from this Real Madrid team, they were very, very fragile.
I want to give a shout out to somebody who I've been hugely critical of, but who had, I thought, a monster game. That's Vinicius. That pass for Hendrik's goal.
Yeah, lovely.
It's the sort of thing that I don't think he's often in a situation where he even has the opportunity or the desire to attempt it, because clearly he goes north-south. But he has this in his locker. I would love for him to look at this and say, hey, I can do this too, and I can do this regularly. And it's a little bit like when we talk about Lamine Yamal, and he can run at players and beat them and do the winger stuff, but he can also spray passes. And I think Vini showed he can do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I thought it was a Jude Bellingham pass. I won't lie, I thought it was a Bellingham pass.
I thought it was a Zidane pass, so...
Yeah, but Zidane didn't play. He was not playing. Bellingham was playing. So the ball that Bellingham
gave
Hendrik...
Zidane retired some years ago.
No. But the ball that Bellingham gave Hendrik a month ago or so for his goal was just a perfect ball, and it looked so similar. And then you're right, when you look and it's Vinicius and you were like, okay, because usually he goes and dribble, he goes one-on-one to the byline and then crosses, like on the Bellingham goal later in that game, which he does great. But this was beautiful, and the lovely finish by Hendrik too. I think Hendrik is still very raw. He's got a lot of work to do, but that was a lovely, lovely finish.
Carlo Ancelotti obviously mixing things up. As you mentioned, we started Hendrik, scored that I thought really good goal. Also, no Rudiger at the back. I mean, they're never going to say this because they're Real Madrid, but clearly somewhere they have, in Florentino's office, they have pinned up a list of priorities, and it goes Champions League, Liga. In fact, Champions League, probably a big gap, and then Liga, and then this. And I think it's interesting that he felt that obviously Champions League coming up in a week's time against Arsenal, game this weekend against Betis, I think. It's interesting that he felt the need to do this, to mix things up. I mean, you mentioned Camavinga at left back as well. To me, this speaks to him looking at his squad and saying, all right, I really, really have to manage the load from here till the end of the season. When you look at the numbers from this game, the XG is dominated by Real Madrid, 3.07, I think, something like that. Real Sociedad right around 1. So you could look at this and say everything is fine, even with these changes that we made. And by the way, it's not like he played all the schlubs, because it was still Vini and Rodrigo starting, Valverde back in the starting lineup, who I think is definitely a game changer. But I think it does speak to the fact that there's really a defensive fragility to this Real Madrid team, regardless of who plays. We saw it at the weekend against Leganés, and now we see it again in this game. And I don't know that you can just, I know we called out Alaba and Camavinga, but I think he felt he needed to play Camavinga at left back because maybe Fran Garcia can't play all these games. Also, it's not as if Fran Garcia is exactly a shutdown defender either.
Yeah, you're right.
So when you look at this, is he kind of playing whack-a-mole with his lineup?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't think he's got. I think he's got options, but then maybe not that many options. Certainly, the fragility over Lucas Vazquez and Camavinga in a game like this, undoubtedly, and against Arsenal, I would expect Valverde to be back at right back, even if that obviously takes a lot away from what he can bring in midfield. And I don't know who starts at left back in a game like that, because Bukayo Saka will start surely in a week time. Martinelli looked like he had a lot of energy and legs in midweek with Arsenal against Fulham too. So this could be where one of the key part of this game, and they have to settle that defense. Rudiger is going to be back starting, and obviously he brings a lot to the team, so it'd be different. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a worry. And I go back to the point that you were making before the January transfer window, where you said it's pretty obvious that they need a centre back, even somebody who can just come in and do a job between January and the end of the season. It doesn't have to be Hudson at 50 million or somebody else like that. But we didn't know what kind of form Alaba would be back in, and we see now. So then you're left with Rudiger, Asensio, who's a young player that Carlo likes and trusts, but that can't play every single game, and then Tchouaméni. So really, Militao is going to come back at some point, yeah. But to be fair, in January, they could have done with somebody who could have played maybe even right back and right centre back, for example.
And this is the thing on top of a team that was already poorly. Leave aside the defensive issues, right? You would create a universe where Militao and Dani Carvajal, they somehow don't get hurt in their final season. You still have that Toni Kroos-shaped absence in midfield, because the alternative is you play a team that packs the box, like we've seen sometimes Arsenal do, and then you don't have that creativity. And then all of a sudden you're just relying on Mbappe or Vinicius pulling something out of thin air, or Bellingham. This just floors me. I mean, I know that this is a team that's constructed on entertainment terms as much as they are on football terms. And they have a coach who doesn't create a fuss, who doesn't create a stink about it. But it's frustrating to find yourself in this situation. I mean, when looking ahead to the Arsenal game, like you said, I mean, part of me says, all right, where do you put these pieces? Because you said Valverde right back, totally makes sense. Yeah. But if I play Valverde right back, I don't have him in midfield. And then who's my third midfielder with Tchouaméni and Bellingham? Because Modric, how many minutes can Modric effectively give me at this stage of the season? Yeah. Do I move Camavinga back in the middle, or is he going to be somehow scarred from this horrendous performance at left? Is Camavinga even fully fit? Because obviously he only came back, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, he's been in and out, really.
Ceballos? And by the way, this is
been out for a while as well. Yeah.
This is also assuming that they don't all get suspended for what happened, but I think we don't believe they will.
We don't.
So all of a sudden, even though we have a Clasico in the Copa del Rey final, which is very, very cool, all of a sudden it seems like their options aren't as wide-ranging.
Yeah. It'd be very interesting to see what Carlo does. A lot of games coming up, obviously, between now and the end of the season. But even now, this game at the weekend, midweek Arsenal, La Liga game again, midweek Arsenal again, because it's back-to-back Champions League quarterfinals too. So it's a lot of games and a lot of choices that he will have to make. The game against Betis at the weekend is not an easy game at all. They are very much in form. And then you go to London in the against the Arsenal team that I think could cause problem to this Real Madrid side. So it'd be really interesting. And Carlo can't get it wrong, I guess, because that almost cost him the game. Really, could he have done it differently? I think so. He could have started Mbappe, for example. I don't know if it would have made a difference. He could have started Asensio. So there's a lot of other things he could have done. It's easy now with hindsight, but those key games coming up.
I'm guessing if he didn't start it, he feels that these guys have carried. They've carried a big load.
Too much. Sure.
His sports science people have said, all right, let's kind of go and manage this. And look, La Real haven't been great.
No.
Of late. You're 1-0 up away from home. Kind of makes sense not to field, two of your strongest players, especially if you're going to need them. I mean, look, let's face it too. Right now, Rudiger is probably more important to Real Madrid than Kylian Mbappe. I know it seems, I feel ridiculous even saying it, but there are other people.
Sure about that.
But what I'm saying is, if Rudiger goes down, then you are absolutely screwed at the back. If Mbappe goes down, you can come up with something with Bellingham and Vinicius and Endrick and Rodrigo and Arda Güler and Brahim Diaz. You've got some combination, some cloud of people that can come in. Obviously, I'm not suggesting Rudiger is on the same level as Mbappe.
No. I see what you mean.
So, as far as La Real are concerned, I think Ramito's going to be very disappointed. To be fair, he also made a huge save right after his blunder.
True. But the blunder is bad.
But it is bad.
It's bad.
And I feel like in some ways maybe that was the turning point because that's when the light came on.
Yeah, definitely. You on paper, and you're right, the stats, Real Madrid were probably the better team overall. But I like the fact that this Real Sociedad team, who were in the lead, then pegged back, then back in again, and clearly towards the second half of extra time played to go to pens. I mean, it was pretty obvious, to be fair. So for them to go that way is pretty heartbreaking in a season where nothing really went their way either, whether in Europe or in the league, and being so close of a final, which would have been great. I mean, La Liga, I'm sure, are very happy that it's a Clasico final. I think a lot of people are. We are, of course. It's another Clasico, and the Clasico this season have been so good that, of course, we want to see one and maybe even two with the Champions League. But I felt a little bit for them because it felt cruel.
Go back to the squad construction argument. Every time I see Oyarzabal playing at center forward, and look, obviously somebody's switching up a little bit with Barrenechea in this game, who started on the wing coming inside. I get the whole fluid front three situation and everything. But man, if you had a guy who could just attack the space and finish and hold the ball up, surely would make Oyarzabal a better. You would get more production from Oyarzabal. And he's a phenomenal footballer. I just never quite get it. I know obviously they've tried. They've had guys there in the past.
Yeah, they still have, but they're young. Yes.
It's a tough call to make. It seems weird that when you look at La Real, and a year ago we were praising them to high heaven for playing some of the best football we've seen.
Remember the game against Inter in the group stages of.
And now they go into the summer. Zubimendi's probably going to leave.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Oyarzabal is going to stick around either. And then you're kind of like resetting. There's always this gap between the big three and everybody else in La Liga.
Yeah, there is, and I mean they're a good example, La Real, really, because they did a really good thing. Olabe, the sporting director, did some really good stuff outside even of their academy, which is a good one. Like gave them Zubimendi or Oyarzabal, etc. But the likes of Kubo, for example, and even Merino before that, it was good. Even now, I like the fact that they go and get Aguerd. I like their thinking. But it's true that at some point, those players, or potentially some of them, will go to bigger clubs, and that's where you are out. So you have to rebuild again, start again. Champions League was great for them. The last 16 against PSG last season, good run, cup runs like this one, because semi-final of the Copa del Rey is good. And in the league, you feel like they will always be in the conversation for 5th place, 6th place, sometimes 4th, as we said for the Champions League last season, but probably never higher. I don't think they've got the budget for it, the money for it either, and it's not their model. Their model is that at some point their best players are always going to leave to a bigger club.
And that's a challenging thing, even when you get money in from your Champions League run or your mid. You know, it's really hard to reload on the fly.